Chapter 15. Blaine. Blaine took a deep breath before entering the center. After his conversation with Kenzi last night, he knew he needed to apologize to Shelby. He was still terrified to be alone with the kid, but he hoped with her help that he could move past that. "Blaine, what are you doing here?" Shelby looked at him and then down to a clipboard. "I didn't know you were on the schedule today." "I'm not. I came to apologize to you for my behavior the other day." A look of confusion crossed her face for a moment, and then her eyes widened. "About the big brother thing." "Yeah, I wasn't completely honest with you. Our schedule is about to get busy, but I said no because I was afraid. My brother died when I was supposed to be watching him, and I was afraid the same thing might happen to one of these kids if they were left in my care. To be honest, I still am afraid. However, Kenzi and Tucker have promised to help me, and these kids do deserve it. It's a great idea, Shelby." Shelby's eyes were an ocean of compassion. "Blaine, I'm so sorry to hear about your brother, but thank you for telling me. We'll set it up so that you feel comfortable, whether that means having your time here or making sure someone else is always with you. We'll make it work." "Thank you." As Blaine left the center, he felt a little lighter. He'd been carrying around this weight by himself for so long that it felt good to share it with others, even if all they could do was lend a listening ear. Climbing into his Mustang, he pointed the car toward the lake house. Since it was his day off from training, he and Kenzi had made plans to meet up and put the doors back on in the kitchen. The large storage container was still outside the cabin when he pulled up, as was Kenzi's car. She had said she wanted to get an early start to check the floor installation. Blaine had left the cabin unlocked for the flooring guy before he left for the weekend because the man had said it would take a few days to finish the job. His mouth dropped open in surprise when he opened the front door moments later. The room not only looked different without the old furniture, but now a beautiful hardwood floor covered the floor. He'd agreed to let Kenzi change the floor because he figured it would raise the value of the cabin, but now he could see what she had seen in her head. It made all the difference in the world. The grain in the floor complemented the exposed wood in the living room, and even without furniture, the place felt warm and inviting. Kenzi appeared in the doorway that led to the kitchen. "It's nice, right?" "It's more than nice. It's amazing. You have a real knack for this, Kenzi." A soft blush colored her cheeks, and her teeth chewed at her bottom lip. "Thank you, but I still haven't lined up another job after this one. It doesn't matter how great I am if I can't get people to take a chance on me." He entered the rest of the way and closed the door behind him. "You let me worry about that. I've got an idea that should have your phone ringing off the walls soon." She raised her eyebrow in silent question, but he wasn't prepared to share that secret yet. "Trust me, it'll be great. Now, how about we finish those doors?" "I thought you'd never ask." She held a screwdriver out to him, and he laughed as he joined her in the kitchen. She turned some music on with her phone, and Blaine chuckled as she bopped to the beat while screwing the doors back on. When the song shifted and slowed, he dropped his screwdriver and grabbed her hand, pulling her to his chest for an impromptu dance. "I know it's short notice, Kenzi, but our first game is Sunday, and I'd love to have you in the box seat cheering me on. Do you think you can make it?" His heart paused as he waited for her answer. Asking her was a huge step for him. He'd never asked a woman to use his tickets before. He'd never wanted the media to associate him with any of them. But he didn't mind being seen with Kenzi. She tilted her head and stared thoughtfully at him as her hand caressed the back of his neck. "I will, on one condition." "Condition?" His throat constricted at the word. Was she going to ask him to face his fear? Or talk about his brother? He was glad that she knew, but he wasn't sure he was ready to share anymore just yet. "Don't worry, it's nothing too bad." She smiled up at him. "I want you to come to church with me tomorrow night. I know you can't do Sunday due to the game, but we have a great sermon on Wednesday night too, and I think you really need God back in your life to heal completely." His jaw tightened as he swallowed. She was probably right, and he'd seen the change God had made in Tucker's life. But was he really ready for that? Was he ready to forgive God for taking his brother? Was he ready to trust that God would forgive him? He took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, I will. The happiness that radiated from Kenzi told him he'd made the right choice, even though his stomach still clenched at the thought. Kenzi. Kenzi walked to her car on cloud 9 that evening. Not only had she spent an amazing afternoon with Blaine, but he'd said yes. He'd asked her to come to his game on Sunday, which was exciting, but more importantly, he'd said he would go to church with her. She couldn't remember the last time a man had come to church with her. For that matter, she couldn't remember the last time she wanted a man to come to church with her. She had to tell Shelby. Fishing her phone from her pocket, she set it up for hands-free and then punched in her friend's number as she started the car. Shelby picked up on the third ring. He said yes, Kenzi said before her friend even had a chance to say hello. Shelby laughed on the other end. Well, hello to you too, Kenzi. Now, please explain. Who said yes? Blaine. He said he'd come to church with me tomorrow. She craned her head both directions as she exited Lost Lake Road. It hardly saw any traffic, but the street it connected with was a busy 2-lane highway. That's great, Kenzi. I'm so glad. It was great. He loved the floors, and we got the cabinets up. He even danced with me in the kitchen. The cabin is actually coming along nicely, and he asked me to Sunday's game. Please tell me you're going too. She would go regardless, but she knew she would have much more fun with Shelby by her side. Yes, I'm going, Shelby said with a chuckle. I think it's kind of expected now that we're engaged. Good. I can't believe this is happening, and I can't believe he said he'd come to church. Kenzi felt like a giddy schoolgirl, like the way she had when Jeff Carpenter asked her to homecoming. Jeff Carpenter. The image of the broad-shouldered jock forced its way into her mind. Kenzi Lanham, how are ya? Kenzi nearly dropped her books. Jeff Carpenter, starting quarterback for the football team, leaned against the locker next to hers. Even though he'd said her name, she still looked around, as if unsure he meant to address her. Me? You're talking to me? Her popularity had been increasing the last few years, ever since her fashion style began trending. But while she was enjoying attending parties and being greeted in the halls, Jeff Carpenter had never spoken to her until now. Was it because she'd finally made it on the cheerleading squad? Of course I'm talking to you. Homecoming is just around the corner, and I need to ask the prettiest girl in the school to be my date. Kenzi blinked. She couldn't be the prettiest girl. She was still the chunky middle schooler in her head. Jeff reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Say you'll go with me. I'd really like to get to know you better. A horn blared, and Kenzi shook her head to clear the image from the past. She raised her hand in apology as the driver behind her sped past. Kenzi, you okay? Concern filled Shelby's voice. Yeah, sorry. I spaced out for a second and a car honked at me. Shelby, what if he's like Jeff? Jeff? Jeff who? Jeff Carpenter from high school. You know, the quarterback I dated for a few months? The one who... She stopped herself from finishing the sentence. The one who broke your heart? Kenzi, why would you think he's like Jeff? Jeff was a jerk. Kenzi bit her lip. She'd never told Shelby the whole story behind Jeff, but maybe it was time to now. Perhaps Blaine wasn't the only one who needed God's healing. She took a deep breath and let the story flow from her lips. Shelby, Jeff and I didn't just break up. He dumped me after we were crowned and told me he'd only dated me to guarantee he would get the crown. The sharp intake of breath belayed Shelby's shock. I knew he was awful, but I had no idea. I'm so sorry, Kenzi. Kenzi bit the inside of her lip. Jeff's dumping me is part of the reason I've avoided relationships. I know Blaine isn't Jeff, but there are some similarities. I don't know if I could take it if he is playing with my emotions. Kenzi, Blaine has his own issues, but the nice part about them is that he knows better than to play with someone's emotions. If he asked you to the game and agreed to go to church, I think he meant it. You're right. Kenzi let out a shaky breath. I've been guarding my heart, well, trying to, since I knew his relationship with God was rather rocky, but maybe this is a sign of good things to come. Oh, Kenzi, I hope so. I've been praying for you guys, and I know Tucker has too. Thanks, Shelby. I'll see you tomorrow. As she hung up the phone, Kenzi knew she had some work to do on herself as well.